morning. How are you? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, my name is Erin. This is Ageless Beauty with Erin. And today we are doing an Evil Lives Here episode. So cue all the fireworks and whatnot. It's exciting. So for those of you that are new, let me tell you what we're going to do. So I watched on Discovery Channel. Actually, I have the app because the seasons that I'm watching are from like 2018 and are no longer on TV. So I watched an episode of Evil Lives Here. Made my notes, which are over here, so you'll see me glancing over. And we are here to discuss the episode I watched while I do makeup. Now, why do I do makeup? Well, this is a beauty channel. I have another series, Get Ready With Me, where I do looks, do makeup, that type of content. This one is my true crime channel, which Evil Lives Here is the name of the series. And I am on season 4. So I've been doing this. I took a huge long break in between. That's all listed in previous videos if you want to know why. And now I'm back catching up. So they have like a lot of seasons. I don't know off the top of my head. Anywhere from 12 to 17. I don't know exactly. And yeah, I'm only on season 4. So I'm on the app. It is a paid app. Really cheap. If you are interested, let me know. It's a great app. I am not here to sell you anything along those lines. Just letting you know that's where I'm watching it. They do have current episodes on regularly scheduled TV. Either, I want to say the Discovery Channel. Because I know the ID channel and the Discovery Channel, Investigative Discovery, I think is what ID stands for, so they're the same umbrella. However, I digress. But the reason for makeup, for one, it gives me something to do while we're talking. For two, I absolutely love doing makeup. So I sit down and do makeup just to have something to do on a normal basis. If I need to think about something, if I need to clear my head, I'll sit down and just do makeup. Yeah, sometimes I do it just to take it off, but that's okay. It's my outlet, and that's why we are here doing makeup while we discuss true crime. So, as I stated, welcome. I'm glad you're here, whether you are new or returning. You know I love you. I do not discuss the makeup I'm using. So you'll find everything I'm using listed below in the comments section. If you have questions on a product, let me know. I'll be glad to answer anything I can. I do have some ambassador codes. Check that out below. I'm always willing to discuss my products that I have a code for. I love them. I try to throw in an ad here and there regarding that. So, that being said, let's skip to one of those ads while we get ready to start the video. Hi guys! Okay, breaking in real quickly to talk about what I'm having for lunch today. Yeah, doesn't it look amazing? So let's discuss what I've got here. It tastes so good. I have got my 1-Up Nutrition. I took half a scoop of lemon Italian ice, half a scoop of strawberry Italian ice, put it in with my strawberry lemonade collagen, added a cup of frozen strawberries, and I'm in heaven. This is literally 80 calories, 25 calories, and 50 calories for the strawberries. 155 calories, 34 grams of protein. And I feel like it is so good. So good. So, go over to oneupnutrition.com. Get you some protein, get you some collagen. I don't know, what do you need? Magnesium, L-carnitine, sleeping aid, gut health, greens and reds. Go check it out. I recommend it all. There's one thing I'm not a fan of. Hit me up and I'll tell you what it is and why. But when you're there, use the code ERIN20. Get 20% off your order. Guys, I can't talk about this stuff enough. I love it. I have collagen in 4 different flavors right now. I've used it coffee. If I don't have a coffee for the day, I'll use it like this. I have 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different flavors of protein. I never have to have the same thing twice. I really don't. I said that before. I mean that. And I have so much other stuff. Go check it out. You won't be sorry. And now, back to my show. All right. I think I am ready to start. Now, this episode, which is season 4, episode 3, The Last Blanco, was originally aired August of 2018. And it's a little bit of a different story than the last couple that we've done. So, we sit down and there's a guy getting mic'd up to talk to us. Now, that's not unusual. However, the Evil Lives Here series does typically talk to more women. I don't know if women are just more willing to share. But this guy's sitting down to talk to us, and he tells us that today he's feeling a little bit emotional. It's all surreal to be in front of the cameras telling his story. And knowing what I know now, I'm really surprised he is. And we'll get to that at the end. But when he says most of his life he had hid from cameras and lived in the shadows, which, okay, I was a little curious. Tell me more. Why are we hiding? What's going on? Again, my notes, for those of you that are new, are my thoughts at the time of watching that. I have now obviously seen this. I'm not doing a live watch and review. I have considered it. I think it would be really, really difficult. But, so a lot of what he says here, I'm confused at. I'm like, tell me more. What's going on? And now I'm like, that makes perfect sense. So anyways, he said it's hard for him to talk about his mother to anyone that is not directly in his family. And they're showing us pictures, which Evil Lives Here has a great way of showing us actual footage, if it's news, newspaper, pictures, real things that we're seeing, they show us. So he is showing us some pictures of his mother and his family. And he's a little kid. And he says they were raised that you don't talk about family. You don't talk about family business. Anything like that to anybody. And the way he says that makes me think, are you a mob? You know, along those lines, he's very, family stays within family and you don't talk about the family business. So yeah, mob was kind of my first thought there. Anyways, then Evil Lives Here tells us, which they pop up and give us little like hints and foreshadowing on what we're going to see. It'll just pop up on the screen. And it says that on February 17th, 1985, Michael Blanco, who we are talking to, his mother, Griselda, was arrested before his eyes. Okay. And I don't know if it's something new with Evil Lives Here, but they have done better in the last few episodes, letting us know who we're talking about, where we're at, locations, dates. So for the last 3 seasons, I didn't know a lot of that until the end. And I always do like a Google search at the end to try to figure out information that wasn't in the show. And that sometimes in the past was how I knew a date, a time, a location. But like I stated, they've been doing a really good job this year, like giving us all that information up front. And I, for one, appreciate it. Anyways, so Michael is narrating the story for us. We are hearing his story. And he tells us that from an early age, he realized his mother was not a normal person. Which I think all of us can say we think our mother or father, depending on your relationship, or grandparent, or somebody in your family is bigger than life, right? That they're, the person you hero worship. And I think that was for Michael. He says his mother was something different. And a lot of people, he says, of course, I don't think he knew this until he was older. He said a lot of people would say his mother was evil. But he said every story had two sides, and his mother had two sides. So he's going to tell us the side of his mother that he knew, right? Of course, then we will hear the side of his mother that everybody else also knew. However, but he said he never saw the side of his mother that everybody considered evil. Now, knowing what I know now and what he proceeds to tell us, he probably saw a lot of it but didn't realize it, right? And I'm going to tell you, my naivety, however you pronounce that word, I'm bad at words, okay? I'm sorry. I'll apologize now. Words are hard. I was naive. I did not realize this man's life isn't anything I can even fathom. So totally out of the realm of anything I would have ever considered normal. So let's get on to that. So after their totally awesome intro, guys, you know, I know, we know, I love that intro. I don't know what it is. I kept telling myself I'm not going to talk about it. Okay, we shall move on. Michael's looking at a picture and tells us his mother's name was Griselda. I'm going to apologize because I'm going to butcher a lot of this. Griselda Blanco de Trujillo. I apologize. And I'm going to say he acted like we should know who that is. Do you know who that is? I had no idea. Of course, back in 1985, when she was making news and being arrested and whatnot, I was 10. So I didn't care about anything but my roller skates and my bike, my friends, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I have no idea who this woman is. Sorry if my dogs are in the background. So it's a beautiful day out. It's supposed to be like 80. It's spring break. You'll hear the wind quite often, which I can't control. I apologize. But there's kids everywhere in the neighborhood. And my dogs are not happy they did not get express permission to be in the neighborhood. Anyways, on to the story. So I have no idea who Griselda is. Like I said, I was 10 back in 1985 when she was making headlines and news. And I'm sure my mother probably knew who she was. Anyways, back to where I was at. He's telling us that his mother was a very elegant lady. But when she went from elegant to rude, it was like that. Like there was no in between for her. There was no midpoint. She was either the sweetest person you ever met or vicious. Okay, now Michael tells us his father's name. Again, means nothing to me, but maybe to you. We'll see. And again, I apologize. I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure. His father's name was Dario Sepulveda, also known as El Artista, or the actor. And he tells us his father had a very flamboyant lifestyle, and that's why everybody called him that. He was very, like, over the top, just very flamboyant. And we're seeing pictures of him. And he was a very attractive man. So I mean, yeah. He really played up his attractiveness and his wealth. Spoiler alert, wealth. And was what he was titled El Artista. And I have a feeling that just because he's attractive, just because he has this cool nickname, and he's flamboyant, over the top, and very rich, that's not going to make him a very nice man. So now Michael is telling us that his father acted like a celebrity, but he doesn't necessarily tell us what he does. So I'm not really sure what he means by that, but I can see, you know, at this time, knowing what I know now, I do get this point. So I'm going to quit talking about what I know now and talk about what I saw at the moment. And in the moment, Michael says, but you knew that his mother, Griselda, was the top of his father's totem pole. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so sweet. I love that. And I do. I absolutely love that. I want to be the top of my husband's totem pole. I want to be his everything, his world, and whatever. Then Michael ruins it and says that his father knew his limits. That his mother was who he bowed down to. And that just took the joy out of my whole totem pole comment. I mean, I was really thinking, you know, Dad treated Mom like a queen and Mom was his world. And it could have been. Don't think so, but literally when that comment was made, my little pitter-patter heart went, aw, I love that. And now it was just like, look. Anyways, Mom was the boss. End of story. We can just end the story right here. Mom was the boss. Anyways, we won't end the story. There's a whole lot more to tell. So Michael's telling us about his other brothers, and apparently he is 10 years younger than his next brother. So, yeah, he was an oopsie baby. Mommy didn't plan on any more kids, and then she had Michael. And I'm seeing a picture at this point of Griselda with what I thought at the time was her husband and 3 boys. So I thought she only had 3 sons. But it turns out that that was actually Griselda with her 4 sons. And so there's actually quite a bit of age difference in these 4 kids. Michael is actually only 10 years younger than his next sibling, but golly, I feel like this wind. I never really find out the age difference for the rest of the brothers, but there's actually quite a bit of age difference. Anyways, okay, Michael says growing up that he knew they were different. Apparently, the family was different. And Michael knew this growing up. He said he always knew that his mom was the boss. Like I said, this is going to be very key to this story. Mom was the boss. End of story. Thank you. And next. So then he tells us that he lived in this mansion. Had all these wonderful cars. And he didn't understand what his mother did for a living that afforded him all these luxuries. So he knew he had luxuries. He was pretty much spoiled, which if I had that kind of money, I'd spoil my kids too. I mean, that's just that. Maybe not to the extreme here, but you know. It's just what he knew. It's what they had. It's how it was. It's what growing up. So now my brain at this moment, spitting everywhere, I apologize. I'm still thinking mob boss, but then I'm thinking drug lord. You know, not yet sure where they're at. I know he is of some Latina descent, which you can tell by the names and the way he's talking. But I don't know anything more than what I'm seeing at this point. So my mind is clicking to these. And then Evil Lives Here pops up and tells us that, and I quote, "It never dawned on Michael Blanco that his mother was a vicious killer," end quote. And I'm like, what? I wasn't expecting that. I thought we had drugs going on here. I didn't expect murder. So is she a murder for hire? Is she an assassin? I don't know. But I'm very intrigued at this point. And then it tells us that there were signs. And Evil Lives Here is so, that is kind of like their favorite saying. Like my favorite saying is, I know, you know, we know, right? Their favorite saying is, but there were signs. So basically what I mean is when it pops up and gives us little hints and tips, like it says Michael didn't know his mother was a vicious killer, underneath it comes up and it says, but there were signs. And it does it on every episode. It's a very way to build up, I guess, suspense or whatever, but I just find it interesting. They do that always. So now they show us a picture of his mother, and she doesn't look like a killer. Nah. What does a killer look like, though? I mean, we've seen all types. Anyways. But as I'm thinking his mother doesn't look like a killer, Michael says she was a chameleon. And I'm like, tell me more. So Michael tells us that his mother loved putting on costumes. She had a whole room dedicated. It was all makeup and wigs and outfits. And her father would go out on dates or even jobs. And she always dressed up to look different. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds like a wonderful room to have. And then I thought, that's kind of the room that I have. I'm not a murderer just because I got wigs and makeup and love my costumes. So tell me more. Maybe she's just an actress. You know, he called Dad the actor, or his dad's nickname was the actor, but maybe Mom was the real actress. I'm not really sure. But Michael says she would dress up every time they go out. Work, on a date, business, any kind of thing. She would dress up, wigs, makeup, the whole thing. And then he says, and it gets a little confusing, but I'll work through it with you. He says that Mom kind of just drilled it in his head that if anybody were to ask him what their names were, it was actually Beatrice and Tony. And Michael's like, he was young in the reenactment, I don't know, 7, 8, something like that. He could have been younger. I can't really ever judge the reenactments to be accurate, but he's like, yo, you're Griselda and Dario. So it was kind of a thing. And she's like, nope, if anybody asks you, we are Beatrice and Tony. And he said it was just drilled into his head to the point that even if a neighbor would be talking to him about his parents, he would tell them their names were Beatrice and Tony. He said he didn't know why. He said, honestly, he thought it was maybe some kind of game that his mom liked to play. You know, she dressed up. But it became a whole thing. And he really just, it was a very curious kid, which we find out going forward. But when your mom and just keeps telling you something over and over, he just started taking it as face value that, okay, you're Dario, or no, you're Beatrice and Tony. And he said he thought his mother was some kind of celebrity. Maybe she was that actress or actor. Maybe there was reasons for the nickname for his dad. But anyways, he thought it was cool. His mother dressed up. She put on all these elaborate wigs. And there was sometimes he would tell us that when she was doing it, she would ask him which wig to wear, which outfit to wear. So she really included him, I guess, in feeling like part of her disguise. And he felt, included. He thought pretty special about all that. But yeah, his mom and dad were Beatrice and Tony. And it's funny because that's really the only time I see any mention of that. So then he tells us that his mom had some pretty strict rules. Okay. So in this reenactment, and I really should have kind of taken this as a hint of what was to come, but they show the house or a house similar to the one that he grew up in, and Holy Mother of God. I don't even think I've seen a house that big and nice, except for on TV. Like, this is just a joke on my part, but it made Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's house looked small. I mean, it was just massive. So, yeah. And then he talks about, this is where I'm so naive because I didn't even realize things like this existed. So he's talking about the cars they have, and he's talking about his Mercedes and blah, blah, and the limos. Okay, when he said Mercedes, that didn't shock me. But they had limos. They owned limos. And if I wasn't literally on Evil Lives Here, knowing that nothing good's coming from this story, I would think maybe they were actresses and actors. But that's not the case. So he's telling us this one story where he was playing. His mom had, surprise, surprise, huge walk-in closets. And he loved playing in them. And I get that. He's a young kid. He's, you know, we're going to get into it a little bit more, but he didn't have a lot of friends, and he played with himself a lot within the house, and he loved the walk-in closets. They were like this treasure trove, right? I get that. I would have too growing up. But he said, you know, he would be playing in the closets, and he could look up on the shelf and see bricks of cash. Money just sitting everywhere. She had money everywhere. And he said, yeah, it would be on the shelf right above the furs. And I went, okay, back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, furs were not as faux pas as they are now. So I don't know what's more pretentious, all the furs or the bricks of money on top of them or on the shelf above them. And the way he says that, it was just a way of life for him. And I'm just like, what? Yeah. Bricks of money on the top of the furs. And when his mom would catch him playing in her room or closet, she wouldn't be happy. She didn't want him in there messing up her things, basically. I don't think she cared a bit about the money because I say that because she'd be like, hey, come sit with me while I work and you can play with the money. And he would be playing with these stacks of money, making houses and just using them as building blocks. You saw him put the house together with a little top. And I'm like, again, never in my wildest imagination. But there you have it. Okay, I'm digressing. Because I couldn't get over the fact that he said he played with that money and he built with it. Because I'm thinking, damn, at your age, if I was playing with money, it was probably pennies. You know, stack those pennies up. And I'm being 100% real. That's probably the extent of me playing with money as a kid growing up. So I think he and I were living on two different planets. It's just the only explanation I have. So, anyways, I digress. He would say that his mom would kind of just, constantly talk about what they could and could not say about their family. And he said if people would ask him why he was so rich, he was supposed to say that they were in real estate. Very plausible explanation. Oh, these have never been used before. Great. Plausible explanation. I guess. I don't know. I don't know anything about the real estate market in the 70s, 80s, whatever they're at. But, yeah, he was supposed to tell people they owned real estate to explain all this money. And this is where he talks about the cars and the limos, and I was just like, literally not expecting the limo comment. I don't know why, but it was like, what? I don't know. So, yeah, there's an extra special extravagance here that they have that I will never be privy to, and I'm okay with that, especially knowing their story. So anyways, she was always telling him that he can never tell anybody about the money in the closet. And I get that. I don't care where you live. You tell people you have bricks of money in all your closets just sitting around. You are literally asking someone to come rob you blind, break in, and murder you, right? So I get that comment, not to say anything. Honestly, I think it's sad enough that he was told. Should have never been privy to that information. He's a kid, and now he knows something that could potentially get them all murdered. But hey, what do I know? And then he tells us that he lived a very solitary life. So like I said, his brothers are older than him, and I'm not really sure where they were at for most of these stories, but he said that he was not allowed to go outside and play. He was not allowed to go to school. He had a tutor. He was homeschooled. He was not, kind of the things that we took for granted in my world, he was not allowed any of that. So I guess that is the payoff or the trade-off for the kind of life that they were living. He was not allowed friends and to go out. And he said that if he saw kids in the neighborhood out playing, he would ask, Mom, can I go outside and play? And she'd be like, not today, tomorrow. And he's like, but you said that yesterday. She said that every time he wanted to go outside and play with somebody. Not today, tomorrow. So he didn't have many friends. I don't think the brothers were around very often. I don't know the what's, whys, or hows, but it's very understandable later on when he talks about how close he was to his mother. Why? He was very sheltered. Okay. But he was not allowed outside to play with the kids. And then he says, he tells a story of one time he's playing in the house, just roaming around, doing what he does. This big ass house. And he's by himself. And he sees his mom's little purse sitting on the table. And I'm having a feeling this is probably pretty this is probably not normal. Because he was very curious about that purse and what could be in it. So he said he went and opened the purse, and there was a .38 revolver in there. And in this reenactment, I literally was just cringing everywhere because it showed this kid picking up this big gun and holding it and playing it, whatever. And Mama caught him and was not happy with him. And when he asked her why she carried a gun, she told him, says, you see this big rock on my finger? People will kill me for it. I get that. I really do, because there's been times I've been kind of scared to wear my ring out in certain places. But it's really an odd thing to say to a kid, right? And he's young. And he said, but you know what? It made sense to me. And he said, and I quote, "We are so filthy rich that people want to hurt us," end quote. Okay. He ain't lying. But found that a very odd thing to say for a young person. But hey, what do I know? And then Evil Liz here pops up and tells us that Michael was about to discover that the truth, and I'm assuming about the gun, was a lot more sinister than afraid someone was going to try to steal her ring. Which, yeah, that's not going to surprise any of us, right? I really shouldn't have tried to put on new lashes. They are the hardest. We're going to go off camera and do that. So Michael tells us that, you know, they were just a different type of family. I'm like, heck, we're only 10 minutes in and I know this. And, but he said there was always, the older he got, he started realizing there were, like, always a lot of extra men around, right? And they were always armed. And he was told that it was just because they're so rich that they were there to protect them. And he had no reason to doubt this. And okay, I get that. He's young, he's being told. So essentially, bodyguards. And he said, and they were family because they were always there, always with the always with them. They just became part of the family. And you know, he didn't think anything of it. They were just his extended family. But he tells of a time, he said that they always would eat dinner with him. So dinner was a big deal to his mother, and it was a big elaborate affair. And everybody ate dinner together. And he tells us that this one time they had a new guy that was joining them, and he came to the table carrying his gun, which was a no-no. Again, family time is sacred time. Family time, you don't bring guns or weapons to the table. And this new guy did. And Michael tells us that his mom flew into a rage. Like, completely flew into a rage. And he said everybody at the table knew this guy has done messed up, right? And I got to think, why didn't anybody tell this dude? You know, but hey, what do I know? So anyways, he's messed up. Mom's yelling at him. I mean, it's a whole fiasco because remember, he said when Mom flew into a rage, there was no middle ground. Like, none. And she is telling this guy, you get rid of that gun, you take it, don't you ever bring it back to my table again. Whatever. So he did. He got up, took it, whatever. But Michael then tells us that it was not above his mother to physically strike someone when she was angry. And they all thought that she was going to hit this guy in this one instance. So yeah, Mom's a peach, ain't she? It just gets better. So, Michael says, you know, he thought it was normal for, he says men, but I guess anybody, to walk around armed. And now he talks about this instance where they go to Disney World. And I got to say, I paused. I went, it's so normal. Anyways, yes, that was the point. Mom did try to stay normal. So in this picture, Mom and Dad, little Michael, and the brother that's 10 years older than him. And then there's 4 men in the back. And I'm like, are those the other brother? I mean, I didn't know. But Michael tells us that the 4 men in the back, one was his uncle, and the other 3 were bodyguards. And let me tell you, man, these people, they knew how to dress up. Like, I love me a reason to get in character, but these guys, I don't think needed one. It was Tuesday. And the men were all dressed in suits with top hats. Mama had her big elegant suit on, and even the little boys were dressed like that with little hats. They weren't top hats, they were the little, I don't know what they're called, but I was like, at first I thought they were dressed that way on purpose for a picture, but apparently it's just how they are. So anyways, the dressing kind of confused me because she's always trying to stay hidden, or I don't know if hidden's the right word, but you know, remember, Michael's not allowed to have friends. They don't want to draw attention to themselves. They can't talk about their family, and yet here she is dressed up like that. And I'm like, what? That would draw a lot of attention. If I saw that, I'd be like, stopping and staring. It just would happen. Anyways, Michael says that Mom and Dad love the attention. They love the flamboyant life. So that's why. And then Michael says, and I quote, when he's talking about this picture, so I'll go back a minute. He's talking about this picture, and it's a sad picture to him. And he doesn't really explain why, but you can tell it's not a pleasant. Well, it is and it's not, because he says he had fun. I guess looking back at it now, because he says, and I quote, let me ask you, do you think this is right? You can't even go on a vacation without being surrounded by evil. End quote. But that was normal for him. Of course, at that age, he didn't realize it was evil. But it was evil. And as I'm not surprised to hear this story, because poor little Michael has been kind of separated and kept away from everybody. But he says, you know, he got attached to some of his bodyguards. And he said specifically one was there every day for him. When he went to sleep, when he woke up, did everything with him. I guess it was his personal bodyguard. And he became his best friend. He became his playmate, his buddy. And yeah, I mean, think about it. His brothers are 10 plus years older than him. They're not in any of the stories. And the only person that he has other than his mother is this bodyguard. But he said he started noticing that the family, bodyguards and such that are always hanging around, would start disappearing. And he said when they disappear, it affected him. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're a kid. Of course it's going to. But Michael proceeds to tell us that this particular bodyguard, his name was Mario. And I guess Mario had been with him for a little while. He was extremely close to Mario. They did everything together. And then one day, Mario disappeared. And, you know, Michael said he got up like normal and he was looking for him. Couldn't find him anywhere. And he went and asked his mom where Mario was. And she told him Mario was gone. He wouldn't be coming back. He went to college. And I thought, well, that's kind of a very weird thing to say, right? And Michael then says, yeah, anytime one of the family members disappeared and never came back, Mom always told him, they went to college. And he was like, I just don't understand why everybody wants to go to college. And I'm laughing only because as a parent, not everybody. I won't say everybody. Like, I have 2 kids. I knew one kid would never go to college, and I knew one would. So I fostered the potential for them to go to college. You know, I never made it out to be something awful. And apparently to Michael, going to college is awful. And I was like, well, okay. College ain't the future of this kid. Which, let's be real, it was never going to be in the future for this kid anyways. But you get what I'm saying. It was kind of just an odd thing to say. Yep, he went to college. He's never coming back. Like, wow. Okay. All right. Anyways. He started questioning the college thing. And He never really understood what happened to the family. Like I said, all the bodyguards became family. So when I say family, I'm talking about that. But they would go off to college and never come back, and he could not understand. He literally could not understand. And at least until one day when he kind of got a glimpse of what was going on. So he tells us a story of when they were on vacation. And he says they were in this really nice hotel. Shock. And they were on the beach. And of course it was his mom, him, and some bodyguards. He doesn't say Dad was there. He doesn't say if any of the kids were there. I don't know. But it was him and Mom and bodyguards. And one day, they dragged this guy into the room where his mom's sitting. And Michael's like, you can tell this guy was really scared. Didn't want to be there. He was forced to be there. But then, you know, it's kind of like the guy got his courage because he started yelling at his mom, saying things like, I'll see you in hell, and just a bunch of stuff like that, right? And of course his mom, Michael says my mom stood up, got in his face, and was like, I will see you in hell. Tell them Blanco sent you. And then she just casually said, take Michael in the other room. So he says, they took him in the other room, and then this guy, he said, I have never heard screams so bad before. He said, I've never even heard animals scream as bad as this man was screaming. He's like, I didn't know what was going on, but I knew the screams weren't good. And then when Mom came out, he asked her, so what happened? What's going on? Why was he screaming like that? And she told him, oh, don't worry about that. It's all good. Forget you ever heard that. And Michael's like, I told her okay, because I knew she wasn't going to be questioned anymore. But he's like, the one thing I did know was he wasn't screaming anymore. He said, I might not have known much. He said, but I knew my mom was to be feared. All right, okay. Yikes. And he never, you know, found out anything else about that. I doubt he ever asked. And, yeah. But then it says, Mom might have been the one to fear. Like I said, she's the boss. So, yes, she is the one to fear. But Dad, he ain't no slouch. So then, in a truly horrible story, and you'll understand why I say that in a minute, it talks about Dad. And about one of the elaborate parties that Dad liked to hold. And there was a lot of dancing and drinking and just good fun time. And of course, young Michael's there. Don't know how it is. He doesn't give us ages for any of this. So I'm thinking, you want the honest truth from me, I think he's probably a little bit older than he wants us to believe he is when he tells this story. So he said there was this woman at the party. Said she was beautiful, and she was in this beautiful red dress, and she was dancing, and he said it was just, you know, he was just fascinated by her. And he said, and I was raised by my brothers or he was taught by his brothers, which is a telling statement in itself that his brothers are teaching him, but hey, that if you that it was okay to call a woman beautiful. I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't bother me. But then he says that if he found a woman beautiful, it was okay to squeeze her. And I'm like, what? And then he says, and I do have a hard time believing this part of it. Like I said, I think he was older than he wants us to believe. He said, but at the time, I didn't realize what I was about to do was wrong. And I had to take a minute for that. That one. Actually, he says, somehow, he doesn't know how it happened. He ended up under this woman's dress, squeezing her. And the man she was dancing with, which turned out to be her husband, was furious. Apparently, again, I'm not sure I believe this either, but apparently he didn't know who Michael was. And he's yelling at him that you don't do that, that's disrespectful, whatever. He ain't wrong. But Dario is there and witnesses this and loses his shit. How dare you scream at my son? My son! You're in my house. You're my guest, and you're screaming at my son. So at this point, they've totally forgotten that Michael has really crossed the line here. That what he has done was not in any shape or form okay. No. Dario is pissed because this guy's yelled at his son. So then Michael says Dario told the bodyguards to take him up to his room and to take the man outside. And Michael says, I didn't know what really was going on, but I knew it was my fault. And he could hear the guy yelling. So he got up, went outside, and saw, I don't know if it was his dad, bodyguard, whatever, but saw them pouring gasoline over this guy. And his dad had a match. And Michael's like, he was getting ready to light that match when they saw him. And his dad was furious. What is he doing here? How'd you let him get out of his room? Blah, blah, blah. Take him back. So Michael says, I didn't see him physically strike the match, light it, and set the guy on fire. He said, but I smelt it. It was the worst smell of his life. He had trouble sleeping because the fire, the light, and the smell, and everything kept him awake. But he said, I didn't know at the time what I did, but I knew I did wrong. And he says it still bothers him to this day. Okay. So now Evil Lives Here tells us that Michael's going to witness his family falling apart. And it tells the story of one night waking up to mom and dad arguing. And apparently, daddy had him a woman on the side. Ooh, big no-no. She was a beautiful, according to Michael, a beautiful blonde, blue-eye American. And mom was not happy. I get it. I would not have been happy. I'm just saying. Not at all. Blush is not blushing for me. So, yeah, they fight. Mama kicks him out and told him that she was going to kill that bitch. And Michael says, and to be fair, I don't know if he means this was before Mom found out about the cheating or after he found out about the cheating. She found out about the cheating. But Michael says Dad was always with this woman. And apparently Michael had seen them together many, many times. And then until he didn't. Until she was no longer in the picture. Okay? Okay? We all know what that means. You know. I know. We know. But yeah, Michael's like, yep. She never came around anymore. She just disappeared. Best she went to college. So anyways. So after the separation, things seemed to be okay for Michael for a while. So, you know, he would see his father on weekends and visiting days, as he called them. Dad would pick him up. They'd spend the day together, you know, doing things. He doesn't really say. He said until one day, and this is actually a tragic story just because Michael's young. But he said until one day, Dad picked him up, told Mom they were going to the mall. Michael said, next thing I know, we're at the airport loading on a plane. Michael did not realize it yet, but his dad was kidnapping him and taking him to Colombia. And you know, his dad just kept saying, you'll see your mom again. It'll be okay. We're just going on vacation. But yeah, this tends to get a little tragic here. So I don't know how long they were in Colombia when this happened. Could have been days, could have been, you know. It was going to have to be long enough that Mom found out they were missing, right? And I did not take enough time to do my makeup, so I won't be done with makeup before I'm done with everything else. But that's okay. Said one day they're driving in Colombia and they get pulled over. And they asked Dad to get out of the car to talk to him. And Michael says, I didn't know what was going on. Dad, he was like, can we fix this? What can we do? Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, they tell him to get out of the car. And Michael's like, they're talking. And next thing that he knows, his dad starts running. And then the cop, one of the cops that was there, because there was two cops on a motorcycle that pulled him over, had an Uzi and proceeded to shoot his father in front of him. So Michael's still in the car, Dad's running, and bullets are flying. He says his dad was shot 27 times. I can't even imagine. I can't. And then probably in an understatement, which maybe not for something else he says later, but he says that was the worst day of his life. And during telling this, he literally gets up and has to walk away. He's crying and he's visibly upset. So yeah. So he was returned to his mom. Doesn't say how long. And he's back in Miami. So now we find out for sure it's Miami that they're at. I'd seen something earlier that said Miami, but it was about the same time he's talking about being on that vacation. So I didn't know if they were in vacation in Miami or they lived in Miami. Plus they mentioned Walt Disney World, and World I believe is in Florida. I think Land is California. And I'm like, okay, I was thinking all this time Florida, but I wasn't sure. But now he confirms Miami with his mom. He's back home. And now he says that, yeah, he was really, really excited to be home. Obviously. He was so excited he was ignoring all the rumors he was hearing about his mom being the one that had his dad killed. He didn't care. He had witnessed this awful, awful thing. He was back home. He felt safe. He was not going to pay attention to any of that. Okay. So now mom is starting to tell him, you saw what happened to Poppy. Those people are coming after us. They want you and me now. And we have to protect each other. So she became very protective of him. Like, to the point, she didn't let him out of his sight, but he couldn't even sleep in his own room. He had to sleep in the same room, in the same bed as her. And then Michael tells us that after that incident, they were on the move a lot. Like, they always had a to-go bag packed. And, you know, mom would tell them they were just trying to stay away from the guys that did that to Poppy, right? So he said that she would say, it's time to go. He would grab the pack and they'd leave. She'd have a suitcase with all her stuff, plus a suitcase full of money that she would take. I guess my understanding is they would leave, but eventually end up coming back. So, mom then starts to tell them about these guys that would show up at their house looking for them, and he was to never open the door for them. They would have jackets on with 3 letters on it, and he was to never talk to them, never open the door for them, or anything. And he says, you know, she never told me it was the actual FBI or the DEA, but he learned that the day they showed up to arrest his mom. He said, the day they showed up at his house, he notices them immediately. You know, cars and their showing up probably was not normal. So he said they get out and they're wearing the jackets. I think he said blue jackets. Yeah, blue jackets with those 3 letters on it. And he said he thought they were there to kill him. He was scared. And he said he's watching as these men are coming into their house and just completely tearing everything up. So they were searching, basically. And he said they were even ripping the cushions on our couch and tearing through. He said, I didn't understand. He said, I just couldn't understand. And he said, it shows him just standing there watching. And until eventually one of the agents, take him upstairs to where his mom's at. And he said, I never seen mom cry. In all the years, I've never seen mom cry. And she's sitting in her room on her bed with her Bible beside her, just crying. And he's like, I was so stunned. I just stood there and watched her like, what's going on? But he doesn't say anything. And then, of course, she pulls him over and she's telling him, she says, oh my gosh, these guys, they've got the wrong person. They've got the wrong person. They think I've done something awful. They've got the wrong person. She said, they found a gun in my purse. I don't understand. It's not mine. I don't know where it came from. And Michael tells us that it was the same .38 he found and played with. But he doesn't say anything, right? I get that. And apparently he's pretty confused. Again, I do understand that. And he said his mom's claiming she's innocent, which he has no reason to think she isn't. But the cops put her in handcuffs and take her away. And now we get to see the mugshot. And I'll tell you what, they actually have a very pretty actress doing the reenactments. Mom was not everything that he made her out to be, as far as, you know, the elaborate wigs and costume and how beautiful she is. And please don't misunderstand. I think all of us think our mom is beautiful, especially at that certain age. She was just a normal looking woman. She really was. Now, I will say Dad was very attractive. I mentioned that. But, yeah, Mom was just a normal. And she's really playing on being this normal, innocent woman, too. So, anyways, so we see the mugshot. And Michael says in many ways that day was the worst day of his life. I laugh because I don't know how you can, what you've witnessed, right? But in the same time, I do get it because Dad's been killed in front of you, no less. Mom is all you have left because brothers, I don't know where they are. And there's a lot of extended family, but he's not really talked a lot about them. So now Mom is what's left, and Mom is who you are, like, extremely attached to. Like I said, they are extremely close. And he just lost her. And he has no idea what's going on. So in many ways, I get what he's saying, that this could be even worse than the day his father died. But at the same time, you watched your father get gunned down in front of you. I personally don't know if there's anything that could be worse than that. However, that's just me, and my opinions don't matter. So, at this time, he says he doesn't really understand yet why she was arrested and taken to jail. But he says he does learn the truth really quickly. And it's one of his cousins. So apparently when Mom was arrested, he was moved in with a cousin, aunt and uncle and the cousins, right? He said one day he's sitting there and he's talking to his cousin, and the cousin's like, you know who your mom is, right? She's like, Michael's like, well, yeah, she's my mom. What do you mean? I know who she is. So the cousin proceeds to tell him that his mother is what they call the La Madrina. And back in my many conspiracy theories ago, I hit one of them right. She was, where's that at? His mother was the queen of cocaine, the Black Widow. The bosses of all bosses in Colombia, of the Colombians. He said that his cousin told him that, his mother was a drug dealer and a murderer, whatever. And he said that he just literally felt like he was in a movie, and it was like everything kind of started flashing back to him. And the things that he didn't realize before, the guns and that kind of thing. He said, those houses we were moving to, they were our safe houses. And he never realized it. All the money, the secrecy, the never talking about your family, the multiple names. And he's like, he felt like I was in a movie, The Godfather. He said, but it was the godmother, and my mom was the godmother. He said his bodyguards, they were hitmen. And he said, it was, I always said the Blancos. And he said, he said the Blanco family took care of business. So they did a really good job throwing me off a little bit because, I thought it was drugs. Actually, I thought it was the mob, which I guess it was in many ways. I don't really touch about it, but they were associated with a Colombian mob. Like I said, I don't get into all that, but it is there in the after story. But it was drugs. And she apparently wasn't, I don't know if she was the assassin, but she was the one hiring the assassin. Does that make sense? Anyway, Evil Lives here pops up and tells us that the law enforcement had been hunting Griselda Blanco for 10 years at least. And at the height of her billion-dollar empire, billion with a B, billion, she made billions. No wonder I couldn't even fathom what Michael was saying, right? But in the, you know, the height of this business, she imported 3,400 pounds of cocaine a month. And Michael said originally his mother was charged with multiple counts of homicide and drug trafficking. She was suspected of ordering over 200 assassinations. Michael said she destroyed families. That's a good way to say that. She sure did. And he said he didn't know that Griselda. That Griselda was awful. That Griselda was evil. That Griselda just destroyed other people without thought. He said he knew Griselda, his mom. And then I find out she's only sentenced for 15 years in prison, which really, hello. First of all, that much drugs and that much coming in and out, I would think would get more than 15 years. But then she's suspected of ordering assassinations, and she still only gets 15? So this is very confusing. We're going to get to it. I still have to do my lipstick, but we're taking our time because I am ahead of schedule. I did not plan this out very well. I just went wee, and did my makeup. So, yeah, I'm really confused on the 15 years, but we'll get to that. Now Michael's showing us another picture, and it's him and his mother sitting on a bench. And he tells us that visiting days was the best days of his teen years. Best day of the week. And apparently this is a picture, and he didn't even look like a teenager in this picture. So I'm going to say I have no idea timelines. But he says it's a picture of him and his mother. She's dressed to the nines again. And I'm like, she's in jail. What do you mean? And he's dressed in like suits, and she's in a suit. But yeah, they're sitting on a bench in front of a tree, and it's just the cutest little picture. And it's his favorite picture. Anyways, he said he'd be talking to his mom, and she'd be like, I'm getting out. I'll get out soon. And he said 1 year turned to 3, 3 turned to 7, 7 turned into 20-something years. So she's convicted at 15, but she's now served 20. And in 1993, she was supposed to be released at that time and was convicted of 2 more murders, or accused of 2 more murders, and that was all delayed. And one of those murders would be eligible for the death chair, or death penalty. And she took a plea bargain and took another 20 years. So she got 15. She served 20 now. And she took another 20. So at the end of this, the math ain't going to be mathin'. So one day, Michael says that he's having drinks with his brother. And he said he'd really kind of been pestering his family. Not necessarily his mom, but his brothers, his siblings, cousins, whatever, to find out if mom actually hired somebody to kill his dad. And he's talking to his brother, and he says after many whiskeys and a lot of prodding, his brothers told him the truth. And he says, yes, Griselda, man, that wind. Griselda paid someone to murder your dad. And it originally caught me when he said your dad, because I thought they were all the same, but we'll find out they're not. But yeah, so the brother has told him that mom did hire someone to kill him because he kidnapped Michael. Okay. And then Michael says, one day I decided to confront my mother. I just wanted her to tell me, did she have my father killed? And he says, she told him no. That wasn't her, that was their enemies. And she never admitted it to him, never said she was responsible. And he said, you know, you could look in somebody's eyes and tell the truth. And I knew she wasn't telling me the truth. He said, I knew then and there that she lied to him and that she actually had his father murdered. But he says, you know, I'm really glad that she never admitted to it, because then I would have this seed of hate towards her. And I couldn't hate her. She was my mom. She was all I had left. So he never wanted to hear her say she did do it. Now, Evil Lives Here tells us that in June 2004, again, math ain't mathin', but it says after nearly 20 years in prison, his mother was released and deported. And there's something going on here. I will explain the best that I can when I looked into it. But I was like, I am not a math genius. I leave all that difficult math to my daughter. But I know 15 plus 20 is 35 years. She's already served what Michael said, 20 years. So there still should be like 15 years left. So now we see a newspaper, and it's just like the first paragraph or so. So I'll read what I saw. And the article says, immigration officials to deport godmother. And godmother is in quotes. And it says Miami. So it's a story out of Miami. A 61-year-old woman known as the godmother who ran a ruthless cocaine empire. That's really all I can see. And I'm like, but I wanted to state that because that's a pretty damning sentence and start to the story, right? But Michael says that all through the prison sentence and when she was deported back to Colombia, they kept a close relation. He talked to her daily. He said they would Skype multiple times a day. And I get that because they were so close. I can't imagine they didn't keep that close relationship. But he says that he was afraid that when they released her and sent her back to Colombia, they were pretty much signing her death warrant. And he says, and they did. So one day he receives a call from his brother. His mother had gone to the local butcher shop. Two guys in a motorcycle pulled up next to her, shot her twice in the head, and left. But he says he was expecting that phone call. He had been expecting that phone call pretty much his whole life. But it doesn't matter if you're expecting or not, the shock, right? It's still tragic. So now Michael's talking about him, and he says that he did dabble in the family business for a little while. He said it is public record. His arrest warrants and everything is public, so he can say that, I guess, without giving too much away or implementing himself for anything. But he said he didn't really want to be in his mom's footsteps, right? He had to make a choice, either go 100% legal or continue the family business. And he said he wanted to go 100% legal because the family business was just a generational curse that really had no end. It's just a big loop. So I don't understand. He said his brothers did follow the business. So I guess maybe that's what he means. The brothers took over the business. He said cocaine destroyed his life. I don't even think he means like taking cocaine. The cocaine business destroyed his life. And he says there are over 22 members of his family dead. And I don't know if he means bodyguards, because remember he called all them family, but I know he's talking about uncles and cousins, brothers. He said he's the last male in the Blanco family. So I'm assuming his brothers are gone. I don't know. I did not find out that either. He says that, it's not worth it. Not all the money in the world could bring his family back. And when the producer asked him if he forgave his mother, he said yes. He forgave her for everything, even having his father murdered. Because his mother was somebody that he loved more than anything. He said that his mother once taught him that everybody had their own path in life to make. Path in life to make. And they lived theirs, and now he's living his. And he's living his with forgiveness and breaking that generational curse. And yeah, I have a feeling that he learned the hard way about that. But at least he is, But I want to say, dude is sitting in a really nice, he's outside a house when they're doing this very nice big pool behind him. He's doing well. I do find out what his legal job is. And I say that just because I don't know if he's doing anything illegal. But I do find out what he does do when I do some search. So now, let's look at Google. And Google had a lot to say. There's a lot about this woman. So, the Wikipedia is the first thing that comes up. And there's a lot of information on Wikipedia. Someone use a lot of that. But I will say, because Wikipedia is not always so accurate, pretty much everything on here is accurate. The story is very well told. So, a lot of it's accurate. And I didn't quote so many different pieces. You'll learn. Anyways, Wikipedia tells us that Griselda was born February 15th, 1943. And she died September 3rd, 2012 at the age of 69. She was a Colombian drug lord who was prominent in the cocaine-based drug trade and underworld of Miami, Florida during the 70s and early 2000s. Which she was in jail from 85. She still? Or was that when the brothers took over? I don't know. So a former lover of hers tells us a little bit about Griselda. I totally missed her name, but when she was 11, Griselda, and I'm going to say her name wrong this whole time, I apologize. Allegedly, she kidnapped, attempted to ransom, and ultimately shot a child from an upscale neighborhood. Whew. She had been a pickpocket before she was even a teenager. And to escape alleged sexual abuse from her mother's boyfriend, she ran away from home at 19 and resorted to theft for survival in the city until the age of 20. There was even speculation that she became a sex worker to support herself during this time. So, she is not a good person. She is not a good influence. There's a whole lot there. She's not. A lot of this that I'm getting ready to talk about is not mentioned in the story that we just heard. It says that Blanco and her first husband, Carlos Trujillo, first started a marijuana dealing enterprise in Colombia. Then she divorced him in 1964 and illegally entered the United States with fake documentation under an assumed name and ended up in Queens, New York with her 3 children. So I'm assuming the 3 kids were all Carlos's. No. I don't know. Because she ended up in New York with her 3 children and second husband, Alberto Bravo. He was a cocaine smuggler for the Medellin cartel. So, apparently, Blanco and her, second husband, Carlos, second husband, Alberto, set up a thriving drug operation in New York. However, 9 years later, April 75, Griselda was identified by authorities and indicted. She was indicted on federal drug conspiracy charges along with 30 of her subordinates. The The family fled to Colombia to avoid conviction. She returned to the U.S. in the latter half of the 70s to start a new drug operation in Miami. Let the heat die, go somewhere else. So it says here that obviously she was arrested February 17, 1985 in her home by DEA agents and was subsequently, she was also charged with conspiring to manufacture, import, and distribute cocaine. The case went to trial in federal court in New York City. I don't understand that. Where she was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison. So, again, the timing didn't make sense for me. So, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So, while she was serving her sentence, she was charged with 3 additional counts of first-degree murder by the state of Florida. The prosecution made a deal with Griselda's most trusted hitman. His name was Jorge Ayala, or Jorge. It's probably Jorge Ayala. And he agreed to testify that Blanco had ordered him to carry out the killings. However, the case collapsed because good old Jorge was found to be caught in the middle of a phone scandal between him and 2 females that were employed at the state attorney's office. Convenient? I think so. So in 98, Blanco pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 20 years in prison to run concurrently to the 15 she already had. But in 2004, so really she didn't spend 20 years. She was arrested in 85. But in light of her frail health, she was granted compassionate release from prison in the U.S. and deported back to Colombia. So that's why the drug lord and the assassin, hirer, whatever you want to call her, was released with just under 20 years in prison. Now, this I find interesting in a holy hell, oh my God, who are these people type of way. And it's not mentioned in the story. Except for Michael's father. Here is the history of Griselda. It's like the more I go, the less I can say. Of Griselda and her husbands. And believe me, it did not pay to be married to Griselda. Billions of dollars is not worth being married to her. So she had 3 husbands and 4 children. She met her first husband, Carlos Trujillo, when she was 13 years old. They had the 3 sons together. Okay, I thought I had read that. But the 3 sons were all Carlos's. And they lived in Medellin, Colombia. All 3 were born by the time Blanco was 26, so she was very young when she had her 3 kids, which go back to her history when she was street working, pickpocketing. I guess she had kids then. So Blanco and Trujillo divorced, but remained business partners until they had an argument over a business deal that went awry. Blanco had Trujillo executed. Following her marriage to Mr. Carlos, Blanco married Alberto Bravo, the one that she ran to New York with. Blanco accused Bravo of stealing millions of dollars from her in the enterprise. And Bravo accused Blanco of letting the Godmother nickname go to her head. Blanco murdered Bravo by shooting him in the head. So we know Michael's story of her dad. But what we don't know, Michael's full name is Michael Corleone Blanco. He was named after Michael Corleone from The Godfather. And her 3rd husband, Dario. They divorced, got separated, whatever, in 1983. You know, he kidnapped Michael when they disagreed over custody. And, yeah, she had him assassinated in Colombia. 3 husbands, 3 assassinations. Yeah. So a little bit more about Michael. I didn't really want to go too much into Michael's story. He told us he did dabble, in the family business, that he was out, yada, yada, yada. But according to the Miami News-Times, Michael's father and older siblings were all killed before he reached adulthood. So his brothers are dead. His mother was in prison for most of his childhood and teenage years, and he was raised by his paternal grandmother and legal guardians. In 2012, Michael was put under house arrest after sentencing on 2 felony counts of cocaine trafficking. So this is where he's talking about where he dabbled. It's public knowledge because he was arrested. His probation ended in 2018, and that's when he came in and did this documentary to recount his childhood. And then in 2019, a year after this episode, he was featured on a VH1 docuseries, Cartel Crew, which follows the descendants of drug lords. He runs a clothing brand called Pure Blanco. That's it for Michael's story, or what he's doing now. He has his business, which is a legit business, and he does talk about his past and what he's been through. So I'm seeing a lot of articles. Like I said, there was a lot about Griselda Blanco, and they were from like websites like Britannica.com, Netflix.com, People.com, and they all say the same thing. So I didn't go in and quote anything from each one of them because it was all the same story. So, okay. But I was really shocked because one of the first places I go is Cinemaholic.com because I love that place as it actually talks about the episode in a little bit more in depth. There was nothing that popped up. So, okay. I will say the list of shows, movies, etc. made on Griselda Blanco blew my mind. Here's a little bit of that. Blanco features prominently in the documentary films Cocaine Cowboys, 2006, and Cocaine Cowboys 2, 2008. She was portrayed by Colombian actress Lucis Vasquez in the 2012 television series Pablo Escobar, the drug lord. Viuda Negra, the Black Widow, was a 2014 Spanish language telenovela adapted of the book La Patrona de Pablo Escobar, based on the story of Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco appeared in Marlon James Booker's prize-winning novel, A Brief History of 7 Killings, 2014. In the television film Cocaine Grandmother, 2018, on Lifetime, Blanco was played by Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then in 2024, just last year, Netflix had a miniseries called Griselda, and she was portrayed by Sofia Vergara. It was a 6-part miniseries. So, and that alone shocked me, but the number of songs that she has mentioned in, talked about, or portrayed in from rappers was ridiculous. I'm not even going to list them because it was just so many. But I mean, even well-known rappers like Lil Kim, there was Nicki Minaj. There was so many. It was just mind-blowing. But, like I said, I'm not mentioning all of those because the list was ridiculous. Longer than the list of movies and series. It really was. So, I didn't find any information on all the other channels, so I left it at that. And then we're going to close on that. I'm just going to say Griselda, however you pronounce her name, was one bad bitch. I wouldn't have wanted to cross her. At all. Yeah. And that is the story of Michael Blanco and his mother, the godmother of cocaine. So, what do you think? It's a lot. It's a little bit different because, you know, normally we handle murders and how people were found dead. This is mentioned, obviously, but it's really the drug trade that we hear. But what really got me, I think, was how little time she spent and got away with it. I mean, literally, she got away with it. Anyways, tell me what you think. What do you think of this story? What do you think of this look? Okay. Until next time, guys, I love you. Goodbye.